they're lightening their complexion in their photos and on their pages to make themselves look lighter than what they are. So when you meet them in person, I'm like, I had no idea you was a dark-skinned sister, because in all your images, you lighten them so much. I thought you were light-skinned.
Although you're speaking on educating us and, to me, empowering us as black people, there's still some of us that kind of like, that throw shade.
Yes, sir.
What do you say to that? Is that part of the problem in itself, or like?
I would probably argue that it's part of the process.
Okay.
There's always going to be your detractors. There's always going to be the naysayers. There's always going to be those who always look to undermine what the message is. The cynic is always there.
Right.
And I think the cynic exists in every culture, every institution, every movement. So why should I be any different? The bird can't fly without resistance from the wind.
That is correct. All right, so let's start out the gate with this this recent, I don't know if it's a bill or whatever DeSantis is doing to try to bury our black history. What do you say to that?
I'm not surprised. I think it's an insult. I think it is disingenuous. I think it is an outright lie to put into the curriculum within the state of Florida that slavery benefited African people because we learned some beneficial skills. Obviously, Governor DeSantis doesn't know much about African history, because one of the reasons the Europeans chose to enslave Africans is because we already had the skills.
Yes.
Many of the crops that were grown in America were native to Africa. In fact, we brought crops with us, and it was particularly certain tribes that were selected during the slave trade because we were already expert in growing cotton, tobacco and things of that nature. So we didn't learn any new skills. If anything, we taught white people skills.
Wow. I mean, straight up.
Yes, sir. Yes,
and how to dress.
Yes,
and
sir.
How to bathe.
Yes, sir.
And a few other
Yes,
things.
Sir. Yes, sir.
So thank you for speaking on that for sure. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about as well. So we spoke about it off air, and I was speaking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about emojis. And I was saying specifically when it comes to emojis on the iPhone and stuff like that, when I respond to people, I always choose the darkest emoji, because I feel like in general, when people use emojis with me, they always seem to want to put a shade lighter than they really are.
Yes, sir.
And so in my thing, I'm like, no, I'd rather put a shade darker because I'm proud of it versus trying to run away from
Absolutely.
From it.
When I use emojis, I also go with the darkest emoji, because for me, it is a representation of your unapologetically Africanity, your unapologetic blackness. You understand? When you go with the darkest emoji, everyone knows that you're unmistakably talking about a black person.
Yes.
Whereas if you go with the tan, you go with the brown, that doesn't have to be African, because you do have brown people who are not Africans. But when you go with the black, we are the only black people on earth. So it makes it unapologetic and unmistakable. And I think it's important that we do that, because one of the things that I'm seeing now on social media with our women, not only the young women, but even older women, they're lightening their complexion in their photos and on their pages to make themselves look lighter than what they are. So when you meet them in person, I'm like, I had no idea you was a dark-skinned sister, because in all your images, you lighten them so much. I thought you were light-skinned. So we clearly see that African people, men and women, but especially the women, because beauty is the weapon that the system uses to make black women feel inferior, whereas its economic power is the weapon that they use to make black men feel inferior. So I think being a dark-skinned brother, you may still catch it, you and I, but we not as much, because there's a movement now where sisters tend to say they prefer the darker skinned brother. But amongst black women, I think they're still punished and overlooked for their dark skin, for being chocolate. You still hear black men say, I want a light-skinned women. When you look at the hip-hop videos, you're still seeing overwhelmingly light-skinned black women being represented. And, of course, we love all sisters of every complexion. We're one people. Red is the first color on the Marcus Garvey flag because it's the blood that makes you African. But at the same time, we need every complexion within our community to feel like they are as important and as valued as every other complexion.
No, I agree with that, and thank you so much for touching on that subject. You talk a lot about economics as really being the key. From when you first started talking about economics and educating people based on like how economics is used so strongly to control us and
Yes,
stuff like
yes.
that. To this point now, do you see changes? Do you see people catching on, or do you see like, damn, every time I push forward, the system has something to push it right back or close?
I do see change. I do see a lot more initiatives now to organize the black dollar, but I'm still not seeing enough power be directed towards creating the institutions that we really need, like the banks, like the schools, like the hospitals, like the supermarkets, like the manufacturing sector or the distribution networks. I see a lot of new black businesses. I think a lot of our young people are picking up the spirit of entrepreneurship, but the critical institutions, I'm still not seeing them. Even when I look at our billionaire class, who I'm proud of, the Tyler Perrys, the Jay-Z's, the Oprahs, the Puffys, the Kanyes, the Rihannas, to see them come from where they came from to get to where they are. I'm proud of them brothers and sisters, but I'm a little disappointed because not one of them has given us a major institution.
Wow. And they have clearly invested into other things like fashion, and
Yes,
movies,
yes,
and other
yes.
things, but not
Give
that
us the
part.
institutions.
Yeah.
Every movement has its messiah. Brothers and sisters, where the school at? And I'm sitting at the school. That's why we do need special ed for some of you. We do need special ed for some of you. He said, where the school? And I'm sitting at the school. We do need special ed for some of you. Some of you do need special education. We do need a coonish special ed program. We need special ed for coons. We have to do that. We have to do that.